This is DW News, live from Berlin. Israel admits killing 7 aid workers in Gaza. A convoy from the charity World Central Kitchen was hit during its operations to provide urgently needed food. Israel's Prime Minister says the strike was unintentional. The charity says it's unforgivable. Also on the programme, a few weeks ago, he was in prison. Now, Bassirou Diomaye Faye is Senegal's youngest president. We take a look at the challenges facing him as he takes office. I'm Phil Gale. Welcome to the programme. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has responded to international outrage at the killing of 7 aid workers in Gaza by admitting what he called an unintentional Israeli strike. The food charity World Central Kitchen announced that one of its convoys had been hit after leaving a warehouse in central Gaza. The charity has now suspended operations in the territory. Cyprus, which has played a key role in trying to establish a sea route to bring much-needed aid, says that means ships carrying more than 200 tons of supplies to Gaza are now turning back. World leaders have condemned the strike and are calling for a swift investigation. Israel says that's already begun as it continues its war against Hamas in response to the October 7 terror attacks.
Another day in Gaza, another tragedy. 7 members of the food aid charity World Central Kitchen were killed after an Israeli airstrike hit an aid convoy. Footage taken after the attack shows 2 burnt-out armoured vehicles featuring the NGO's logo, as well as a soft-skin vehicle. In a statement published online, World Central Kitchen CEO Erin Gore said she was heartbroken, adding that using food as a weapon of war was unforgivable. The NGO says the vehicles were travelling through a deconflicted zone and had coordinated their movements beforehand with the authorities. Among those killed was 44-year-old Zomi Francom from Melbourne, seen on the left here at a food tent in Gaza last month. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese described her death as tragic and reiterated his call for a sustainable ceasefire.
This is someone who is volunteering overseas to provide aid through this charity for people who are suffering tremendous deprivation in Gaza. And this is just completely unacceptable. We want full accountability for this, because this is a tragedy that should never have occurred.
Israel's Prime Minister said Israel was responsible.
Unfortunately, a tragic incident happened in the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. It happens in war. We are fully looking into it, contacting governments, and we will do everything so this incident won't happen again.
World Central Kitchen has announced it's pausing its operations in the region until further notice.
Well, the biggest provider of humanitarian aid to Gaza is the UN's Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA. Their communications director, Juliette Tutuma, joined me earlier.
First of all, let me start by saying how devastated we all are at UNRWA at this news. This is a huge blow to the humanitarian community, and it comes at such a critical time as we work all together inside Gaza to avert famine, where the clock is ticking very, very fast, especially in northern Gaza.
OK. And Israel has, just looking at the wider aid picture, Israel has barred your agency from delivering aid to the north of Gaza. Other aid groups that say sending aid convoys north is difficult because of restrictions placed on them by the IDF. So what aid is getting through to Gaza's north?
It's a very good question. I think very, very little is getting to the north, if anything at all. You're absolutely right. The Israeli authorities have banned UNRWA, which is the largest humanitarian organization in the Gaza Strip from getting to the north and delivering much needed food and nutrition supplies, including for children. And we call on the Israeli authorities, especially in light of the tragedy from last night, to reverse this decision and allow UNRWA once again to be able to fulfill its duties and deliver much needed humanitarian assistance, including food, to people who are hungry in northern Gaza.
And so the fact that the World Kitchen is now no longer operating, that must have a significant impact on the ground.
What Gaza and people need right now is more humanitarian aid, not less humanitarian aid. And therefore, there needs to be more humanitarian assistance that flows via the road, including through the crossing points that connect the enclave with Israel. There needs to be more access to northern Gaza, including through UNRWA, which is the largest humanitarian organization at the moment there.
The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, today described Israel's steps to allow aid into Gaza as insufficient. Given the mounting international pressure, is it possible that this tragedy could actually become a turning point and perhaps even giving Israel an excuse to ease restrictions on aid into the territory?
Well, Israel needs to ease those restrictions and lift all these limitations, bureaucratic and political, equally, to allow organizations like UNRWA to deliver much needed supplies. You see, the clock is ticking very, very fast towards famine. There's no time to waste on bureaucracy and politics. It is time for human action, and that can be done, including via UNRWA, which is the largest humanitarian organization in Gaza.
And what are the restrictions that humanitarian aid are facing that are said to be imposed by Israel?
Well, to begin with, there is a siege, which means that there is very little humanitarian or commercial supplies that come into the Gaza Strip. And when we do eventually get the very little number of trucks that the Israeli authorities allow, getting those supplies up north is also a challenge because of restrictions that the Israeli authorities have imposed on the movement of the convoys. And then you have the risks and the security involved. You see, on 3 different occasions at UNRWA, we had the Israeli authorities, Israeli forces hit at our convoys, either on the way up or back from northern Gaza, with convoys that delivered food to northern Gaza.
Good talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Juliet Touma from UNRWA. Now to Senegal, which has a new president. Bassirou Diomaye Faye was sworn in today, marking a dramatic change of the former opposition figure who was in jail just a few weeks ago. The 44-year-old swept last month's elections on pledges of radical reform just 10 days after being released from prison. Several African leaders attended his swearing-in ceremony. So here's a look at Africa's youngest elected president and the challenges he now faces.
His supporters call him Mr. Clean. That's because President Bassirou Diomaye Faye is promising a new Senegal.
The Senegalese people have chosen to break with the past. I pledge to govern with humility and transparency and to fight corruption at all levels. I pledge to devote myself fully to rebuilding our institutions and strengthening the foundations of our way of life together.
Up until now, Faye was not a well-known political figure, and he only entered the leadership race as a substitute for his mentor Ousmane Sonko, a long-standing opposition force in the country who was disqualified from the election because of a conviction. Released from jail himself less than 2 weeks before the vote, 44-year-old Faye is now Senegal's youngest president, riding on the back of Sonko's young supporters. You will see a different face of the Senegalese people and of Senegal, because it's a total revolution. Everything is going to change, behaviorally, socially, and financially. Everything is going to change. Faye appealed to jobless voters struggling under the weight of high unemployment. He also rallied support under a populist Pan-African platform. That included promises of economic independence and a new currency not pegged to the euro. But Senegal will also start producing oil and gas this year, which could mean new international partnerships.
Senegal will always hold its ground and remain a friendly country and a reliable ally to any partner who engages with us in virtuous, respectful, and mutually productive cooperation.
The run-up to this election was filled with fears of democratic backsliding. Faye now faces the challenge of inspiring confidence on all levels. Experts say Senegal will need sweeping reforms if it's to move forward.
There's a need for grand legislative reform that is going to probably devolve the presidential power in the country, and then to also fight corruption, which I think has been the bane of development in this country.
Now it's time to see if Faye, a young and unexpected leader, can really lead Senegal into a new chapter.
Well, fighting corruption seems like an obvious priority for a new president, but why is devolving power seen as a necessity? I asked journalist Awa Bakala in the Senegalese capital, Dakar.
So the corruption has been a big topic because during Macky Sall era, there has been lots of news topic that broke and where there was absolutely no consequences regarding corruption, regarding nepotism as well, and people who basically were part of the family of Macky Sall in the government, for instance, and were appointed to places such as ministers, etc. Whereas you have also a very experienced people and very qualified people who never had a chance to show what they can bring to their country because of political reasons or just because of nepotism, for instance, for absolutely no reason. But
right.
the impunity that they have been enjoying sometimes is something that has fueled the anti-corruption will of this president today.
Understood. We heard in the report that President Faye was a late stand-in as a candidate after the opposition leader Ousmane Sonko was barred. So is Sonko likely to play a role in the new government?
Absolutely, Sonko is definitely going to play a role in the government, maybe not in the government, but he will definitely be an important advisor. So maybe you don't know, but when Sonko was not available for TV debates, Diomaye Faye was the one who was actually very present in debating and defending Sonko's program and vision before he actually was appointed as the candidate of the PASTEF party. So together it will be very interesting to see how it will be an unofficial, by-brained policy that will function all together and apply for this policy.
And another promise of the new president was getting rid of the CFA franc, which was inherited from the French colonial era, and that's pegged to the euro. Is this doable?
It's technically kind of doable. You already have heard that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger wanted to get rid of this currency. So maybe there will be a big intention, but is it going to work? That is something that will take time to demonstrate. The CFA currency is indeed one of the biggest topic, but it's also because it's the biggest symbol of a breakup of against the former imperialistic money and the former colony, and it's the last trace that you have on a daily basis in your hand of the colonial era. So. This is actually more of a symbolic breakup with France and with the euro. So rather than that, in his speech today, he mainly spoke about the peace and also the security in the region, the peace in the country, but also the security and to fight against corruption, as we just said.
OK, thank you so much for talking us through that so clearly. Journalist Awa Bakala in Dhaka. And with that, you're up to date. Up next on DW, Global Us goes to Malaysia to find out more about how microplastics end up in our food. Have a good day.